Hey everyone, Justin with Deep Dive Stocks here, and today we're going to be doing a data dive into ZEN, or ZenDesk. So let's get started. So ZenDesk was suggested to me. Seems like it's a pretty popular stock right now, so I figured it'd be a good stock to look at the Deep Dive stock report just to figure out what's going on with it. So this is the Deep Dive stock report. As usual, we're going to start with the VoEx graph. If you haven't, I would definitely recommend checking out the VoEx video on my channel just to get an overview of what it does, what it measures, how it measures it, and how to interpret it. But the main takeaway is, as long as VoEx is inside of these two horizontal lines, a stock is said to be stable. When VoEx moves outside of those horizontal lines, either above it in the inhibition zone or below into the propagation zone, a stock is considered unstable. So we can see right off the bat that ZenDesk right now is pretty unstable. And the question we have today is, well, why is that the case? So let's move all the way back to 2021, and we see that the overall price for ZEN from January to July is relatively stagnant, right? VoEx is inside of stability, which is indicating that nothing crazy is going on, and then it starts to migrate down towards the propagation line, eventually falling into the propagation zone in about mid of July 2021. After that, we see the standard price action that happens after VoEx falls into the propagation zone, which is price depreciation. I mean, a pretty steady one at that. Again, ZenDesk then stabilizes a little bit in the latter half of 2021, but it seems like recently the giant increase, or what happened in February of 2022, this price appreciation really sent the stability on ZenDesk well into the inhibition zone. And I guess just a quick primer, it's called the inhibition zone because typically this is what happens. The price will go up, VoEx will indicate that that price action is provoking too much instability. And so eventually, once VoEx starts falling back down, we can anticipate the price to fall back down as well. And it will typically fall to wherever VoEx was stable the last time. But for now, price is going up. We're being told that this price appreciation is probably not going to be long-lived. And let's see if we can see that in other parts of the report. If we move down to the snap graphs take VoEx and then change it into a positive or negative price prediction over 4 intervals: the 10-day, or the 20-day, or the 1 month, 10-day, 2 weeks, 5 days or 1 week, and then obviously the 1 day. All the various VoEx behaviors we see here gets computed through the snap algorithm, and we get a nice prediction based off of where the crosshairs are. If the crosshairs are above the gold line, like they are on the 20-day, the 10-day, the 5-day snap graphs, that indicates positive returns. And then if the crosshairs are below the gold line like they are on the 1 day, that indicates negative returns. So on ZEN, we do see this most recent VoEx behavior for the snap algorithm is indicating positive returns on 3 of the 4 time frames. But tomorrow on Monday, there's a propensity for a negative return. I do have a video on the snap graphs coming up, so keep an eye out for that. The new addition to the Deep Dive stock reports I'm pretty excited about is the Hedging Heat Map. The Hedging Heat Map takes all of the options and all of the various things that options dealers hedge with those options, and it computes it from either a change in volatility or a change in price, and then it tells us where the price or volatility has to move to maintain a gamma neutral state, or what will happen if the price moves, the price and the IV move in certain combinations, right? So we look for the crosshairs, which is right here. That is the current state of ZEN. And we see that if ZEN rises appreciably in spot, and regardless of what IV does, we start to encounter some pretty severe selling pressure. Anytime these boxes are numbered, that indicates severe selling pressure, whereas the lighter regions just indicate kind of a passive bid or passive ask. But we also see that right below, we do have a little bit of a gap down forming here, which is probably what the snap algorithm is detecting. So that if we gap down, that seems to be about 125, then we start to encounter some really nice purchasing support. It is worth mentioning that ZEN, the hedging heat map for ZEN right now is backwards to what we would consider a stable hedging heat map. Typically we would, no, I'm sorry, it is just fine. In the next DD, if you stick around on my channel, we're actually going to see a unhealthy hedging or an unstable hedging heat map, but this one is good. You always want selling to be above the current spot and purchasing to be below, although ideally you would want the selling pressure to be slightly less than the purchasing pressure, but we see here that the purchasing pressure really only kicks in if volatility drops some, whereas the selling pressure is pretty pronounced regardless of IV and not too far from our current position. But overall, it is a stable hedging heat map, but a gap down to 125 before we encounter some purchasing support. It follows in line with the snap graph's interpretation of the situation as well. We can move then to the expected price range. These are pretty cool. So the dashed lines represent the market's one standard deviation or 68% probability price range for a given stock. And mostly with the expected price range, we just want to see if a stock is well behaved. So does it behave in accordance to the stock market's anticipations? And we see mild behavior, right? So we see there are quite a few occasions when ZEN does fall more or depreciate more than the market expects given its implied volatility. And then on the bottom is the implied volatility here. And for what it's worth, there seems to be quite an abundance of liquidity that entered ZEN's playing field in about mid of February, and it's kind of just been hanging out since. So I guess the action we'll take away from here is if we anticipate downside on ZEN, anticipate that it might move more than the expected price range table below that we're gonna see. The shorting behavior for ZEN is pretty unremarkable. No big changes in the trend, no big spikes other than, I guess this one in the beginning of April, but it was unsustained, and a single day of increased shorting isn't too remarkable. The options layout is relatively okay for a stock with not that many options. So we have the normal distribution of calls here, which is always nice to see, so long as the majority of these calls are dealer long. It always gets confusing no matter how many times I say it. And then the puts here, we do have a majority of the puts seem to be out of the money, and as long as those are dealers short, everything is kosher. We do see on Thursday, since it was a short week, that a decent amount of options were closed. So we saw a good amount of these calls, about 250% reduction in these calls, or I guess to be technical, a 250% difference. But again, that's a normal distribution, so that's nice. That means that those calls were probably expired from or closed because of their expiry. And then we have that out of the money put situation going on as well. So overall, even though these aren't the most, it's not the most filled options field in the market, it is certainly a healthy one. And we can see that reflected here as well, where we have a positive delta value. That means that's good. That means we notice that in the hedging heat map above, where we have that indicates that we get some selling pressure if the spot rises, but the opposite is true, where we get some nice purchasing support if the price falls, which is something you always want. The hedging requirement, that tells us how many shares have to be purchased or sold based off of the hedging heat map, which is similar, so the hedging matrix rather. So the hedging matrix is just the static picture of the hedging heat map we saw above. So basically this is where the crosshairs are currently. And we see that yesterday's or Thursday's price movement is going to provoke about a 1 million purchasing requirement in order to hedge all the options, which is pretty decent considering the volume is 1 million. So it's almost a full day's worth of purchasing support that should be entering ZEN here pretty soon. Shorting is relatively uninteresting, as we said before, so with only a 4 DTC or days to cover. And then lastly, as we said, with the expected price range graph, we can look at the expected price range table. So suppose we do think in the next month that the price is going to go up. Well, the market is expecting, or the market would be okay with, or the upper limits of the 68% probability cone for ZEN for 1 month would be 13.09%. So that would put us right at $141.55. So that's where I would position myself if I anticipated a full long month of just constant appreciations in price. We can see that the upper limit for us would be 141.55. So overall, that's ZEN. I would say short to medium term, ZEN looks pretty healthy, right? Despite the VoEx being quite drastically inside the inhibition zone, so that's going to be something to keep an eye out for. That's going to tell me that in going long on ZEN, I'm just going to be quick to collect any long gains or realize any of my long gains, and then keep an eye out on this VoEx, because if it starts to fall back towards the inhibition line, that can foretell that the stock, that this price appreciation, which the market is not really accepting that much, is about to give way, and the price will fall back to where VoEx was previously inside of stability. But with all three of the four snap graphs indicating positive returns, and the 1 day indicating negative returns, which falls in line with that little gamma gap that we see here in the hedging heat map, I think ZEN is a pretty stable stock, all things considered. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for coming. This has been ZEN. I'm Justin with Deep Dive Stocks Data Dive. If you like these kind of analysis, please like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Let me know you enjoy it. I'll keep doing them, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.